guy holding a latte. 1. The guy who brought a PowerPoint presentation. One man decided romance needed a slideshow. He showed up to his first date with an actual PowerPoint labeled, "Why You Should Date Me." It had bullet points, charts, and even a Q&A slide at the end. His date sat there, politely watching what felt like a TED Talk for loneliness. He even included a competitor analysis, comparing himself to her exes, complete with bar graphs measuring humor, height, and emotional availability. The tragic part? He still ran over the time limit. When he reached the closing slide titled "Questions," she stood up and said, "Yes, why did I agree to this?" Then left before the credits rolled. Nothing says romance like Microsoft Office and crippling secondhand embarrassment. 2. The woman who ordered for him. Forever. At a fancy restaurant, a man politely asked his date what she'd like. She smiled and said, "I'll handle it," then proceeded to order everything. His drink, his entree, even his dessert, all decided by her psychic understanding of what he would have wanted. He didn't say a word the entire dinner, partly because he was in shock, partly because she ordered him the vegan tasting menu despite him mentioning he worked at a barbecue joint. When the waiter brought the check, she grabbed that too, announced, "This relationship will be 50-50, emotionally, not financially," and Venmo requested him before dessert arrived. He said it felt less like a date and more like a hostile restaurant takeover. 3. The guy who brought his mom. Literally, a woman in Ohio showed up to a coffee shop date and noticed her match hadn't arrived yet. Then she saw him walk in, with a woman about 20 years older. She assumed maybe it was an awkward work thing. Nope. He introduced her cheerfully. "This is my mom. She's my ride and my emotional support system." The mom immediately took out a notepad and started asking the woman questions about her job stability, family values, and whether she believed in premarital brunch. At one point, she even whispered, "He's a Pisces. Be gentle." The date ended when the mom asked if they could take a family photo for Facebook. The woman ran so fast, she probably broke a land speed record for bad decisions. 4. The guy who thought sharing trauma was flirting. Some people open with small talk. Others apparently open with childhood trauma and a side of emotional devastation. One woman said her first date started normally. Coffee, laughter, light conversation, until he leaned in and said, "You seem trustworthy. Want to hear about my darkest moment?" He then launched into a 45-minute monologue about his ex, his therapist, and the time he lived in a tent to find himself. By the end, she had finished 2 cappuccinos, lost the will to live, and accidentally learned his entire psychiatric history. When the barista asked if they wanted refills, she whispered, "Only if it's stronger than regret." The man proudly said he loved being vulnerable early. She said it felt less like vulnerability and more like being held hostage by trauma with foam art. He texted her later saying, "You're the first person I've ever been this open with." She never replied, mostly because she was still emotionally exhausted 2 weeks later. 5. The woman who brought her tarot deck. One man thought his first date would be simple: dinner, maybe a drink, and polite conversation. Instead, it turned into a full psychic evaluation. Midway through appetizers, his date pulled out a tarot deck, spread it across the table, and said, "Let's see if the universe approves of us." The waiter froze halfway through pouring water. She dramatically flipped a card, the Tower, gasped, and announced, "We're doomed." He tried to laugh it off, but she wasn't done. She demanded his birth time for astrological verification. When he said he didn't know it, she accused him of hiding his rising sign. He spent the rest of dinner being lectured about Mercury's position and his supposed emotional blockage from 2014. The bill arrived, and she insisted, "We'll split it. The cards warned me about moochers." He later told friends it was the first time he'd been rejected by both a woman and the cosmos simultaneously. 6. The guy who complained about the bill. Before ordering, imagine starting a date by sighing loudly at the menu like it just personally insulted your finances. That's what one woman dealt with when her date picked a nice Italian place, sat down, and immediately groaned, "Wow, these prices are outrageous." They hadn't even ordered drinks yet. He asked the waiter if there was a smaller portion or maybe a discount for polite customers. He ordered the cheapest thing, breadsticks, and spent 20 minutes calculating the potential tip just in case things don't go well. When the check came, he pushed it toward her and said, "You're a feminist, right? So equality means splitting this evenly." She paid the whole bill out of pure mercy, or maybe pity. He texted her later saying, "Next time, we could do McDonald's. I have coupons." There was no next time. Some people bring flowers. He brought a Groupon. 7. The woman who live-streamed the entire date. Some people post selfies. Others broadcast their disasters in real time. One guy showed up for what he thought would be a quiet dinner, only to realize his date was live streaming it to her followers. She started the evening by saying, "Say hi to my viewers," and propped her phone against a salt shaker. Every conversation became content. When he asked about her hobbies, she smiled at the camera and said, "What do we think, chat? Should I tell him?" At one point, her viewers voted on what she should order. The poor waiter was trapped between a TikTok audience and a man slowly losing his will to live. When the check arrived, she told her followers, "Let's see if he's a gentleman or a cheapskate." He stood up, paid quietly, and left. Her chat instantly flooded with comments like, "He's the hero we needed." She ended the stream saying, "Ugh, men can't handle confident women." No, just women with Wi-Fi and zero shame. 8. The guy who brought a gift. For himself. It's always nice when someone brings a gift to a first date, unless it's for themselves. One woman said her date arrived with a small wrapped box. She smiled, assuming it was for her. He sat down, handed it to himself, and said, "I believe in self-love." He unwrapped a pair of expensive headphones, admired them, and said, "You can listen if this date gets boring." It did, fast. Throughout dinner, he kept referring to his purchase as the only relationship that'll never disappoint me. When she asked if he always bought himself presents, he said, "Only when I do something brave, like go on a date with someone new." He even took a selfie with the box, captioning it, "Best company ever." The woman said it was the first time she'd ever been third-wheeled by consumer electronics. She left halfway through dessert. He didn't notice. He was too busy naming his AirPods. 9. The woman who brought a list of interview questions for one unfortunate man. His first date turned into an unpaid HR screening. He said she pulled out a literal clipboard, yes, with paper, and told him she had a few compatibility questions. It started normal enough. "What do you do for work?" Then it got weird fast. "Describe your 5-year emotional growth plan. How do you resolve conflict during Mercury retrograde? Would your ex describe you as punctual or emotionally stunted?" He laughed nervously, but she was dead serious. At question 6, she actually said, "Please answer concisely. I'm timing responses." When he tried to joke that it felt like a job interview, she replied, "That's the goal. Dating is just long-term hiring." She even rated his answers with a pen, occasionally frowning and writing, "Needs improvement." When the bill arrived, she smiled and said, "You'll hear from me if you make it to round 2. He nodded, left, and blocked her number faster than HR processes payroll. 10. The guy who tried to split the check. By calorie count, equality is important, but this man took it straight into the twilight zone. When the check arrived, he pulled out his phone calculator like an accountant at tax time. He started dividing the bill by who ate more calories. He explained, "It's only fair. You ordered pasta, I had salad." The waiter froze mid-step. She laughed, thinking he was kidding. He wasn't. He even Googled the restaurant's menu to estimate exact numbers. "You had the breadsticks. That's 200 extra," he said like a gym instructor with a vendetta. When she offered to just pay the whole bill, he objected, saying, "No, I believe in fairness. I just don't believe in financial cardio." She left a generous tip out of embarrassment, and he still Venmo requested her later for rounding errors. She said it was like dining with a human spreadsheet who thought romance meant accurate math. 11. The woman who talked about her ex in the present tense. Talking about exes on a first date is risky. Talking about them like they still live with you? That's Olympic-level delusion. One man said his date kept using the present tense when describing her ex. "He's great at cooking. He always fixes my car. He's probably feeding my cat right now." At first, he thought it was nostalgia. Then she casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, he doesn't know I'm on this date yet." Yet, as in, not past tense. She admitted she hadn't officially broken up with him because she wanted to see if this goes anywhere first. The man nearly choked on his drink. She added, He's actually picking me up later. He paid immediately, wished her and the team good luck, and left. Later that night, she texted, "You were nice, but my boyfriend thinks you gave off weird energy." Sometimes the red flag doesn't wave, it texts you. 12. The guy who tried to propose. During the appetizers. Yes, you read that right, propose. A woman said her first date started with casual chit-chat and ended with her date down on one knee between the mozzarella sticks and the Caesar salad. He explained he was a hopeless romantic who didn't want to waste time on small talk when destiny is obvious. She thought it was a prank until he pulled out a plastic ring, the kind you get from a vending machine. When she politely said, "You don't even know my last name," he replied, "That's what marriage is for." Discovery. The waiter, unsure whether to clap or call security, slowly backed away. After she declined, he sighed and said, "You'll regret passing up a man who moves efficiently." She told her friends she didn't even get to the entree before dodging lifelong commitment and, possibly, a restraining order. 13. The woman who brought her dog and ordered for him too. A man showed up for brunch, expecting a pleasant first date. Instead, he met Cooper, a French bulldog in a bow tie sitting across the table in his own chair. The woman said, "If he doesn't like you, this won't work." Cooper proceeded to glare at him like a tiny furry therapist. When the waiter came, she ordered 2 meals, one for herself, one for Cooper, chicken and rice, no seasoning. The man tried to joke about it, but she cut him off, saying, "He's sensitive to sarcasm." Halfway through the meal, Cooper barked, and she whispered, "He's telling me you're emotionally unavailable." When the check arrived, she asked if they could split it 3 ways, me, you, and Cooper. He paid the full bill just to escape. Later, she texted, "Cooper didn't feel a connection." He replied, "Neither did I, but tell him I said good luck on his next human." 14. The guy who showed up in pajamas. And to be his true self. Comfort is important, but this guy treated it like a religion. His date showed up to a trendy cafe dressed nicely and found him there in plaid pajama pants, slippers, and a t-shirt that said Nap King. He explained, "I believe in authenticity. This is who I really am." He then ordered hot cocoa. Because coffee is too aggressive, the waiter asked if he wanted whipped cream. He said, "Surprise me. Life's an adventure." The woman tried to make conversation, but he yawned through half of it and complained that the chairs were emotionally rigid. When she hinted that pajamas might not send the right message, he said, "If you can't love me at my coziest, you don't deserve me at my awakest." She left halfway through, and he texted later, "You missed out. I was going to show you my blanket fort." She replied, "I think I already saw it. You wore it." 15. The woman who turned the date into a job pitch. One poor guy said his first date started like a rom-com and ended like a LinkedIn webinar. She smiled sweetly over drinks, and within 10 minutes, pulled out business cards. She wasn't looking for love, she was looking for recruits. Apparently, she worked for a wellness-based entrepreneurial collective, which is MLM code for Pyramid with Candles. Every time he tried to steer the conversation back to normal topics, she'd pivot. "That's interesting. Have you ever thought about becoming your own boss?" He asked what she did for fun, and she said, "Motivate others through sales." By dessert, she had given him a brochure, a referral link, and a limited-time joining bonus. He said it was the only date where saying no felt like a financial transaction. As he left, she smiled and said, "You're not my soulmate, but you'd be a great downline." He ran, fast. 16. The guy who thought mystery meant lying about everything. One woman said her date described himself online as a man of mystery. In person, that turned out to mean a man who lies like it's his cardio. He claimed to be a pilot, but didn't know what an altimeter was. He said he'd lived in Paris, but called the Eiffel Tower that big metal triangle thing. When she gently asked if he was exaggerating, he said, "No, I'm just protecting my aura." Later, he admitted he was actually an assistant manager at a tire shop, but insisted, "It's basically the same thing. Planes have wheels." The date derailed completely when he pretended to get an urgent call from NASA. His phone didn't even ring. He just stared at a blank screen and said, "Sorry, space stuff." She excused herself and texted a friend, "If I don't make it out, tell NASA I said hi." It was less dinner and more live-action roleplay for people allergic to honesty. 17. The woman who brought a puppet to break the ice. There's quirky, and then there's ventriloquist-level deranged. One poor man showed up at a bar and was immediately greeted not just by his date, but by Mr. Buttons, a sock puppet with googly eyes and a bow tie. She introduced them both and said, "He helps me open up." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Throughout the evening, she spoke mostly through the puppet. Mr. Buttons asked the questions, gave commentary, and even ordered drinks. "He'll have a beer. I'll have a Chardonnay." When the man tried to talk directly to her, she whispered, "Please, address Mr. Buttons. He gets jealous." At one point, she got emotional and said, "He likes you," while moving the puppet's tiny arm. He left after 40 minutes, mumbling something about having to feed his real dog. She texted later, "Mr. Buttons was disappointed in your communication skills." He replied, "Tell him to take it up with my sock." 18. The guy who gave a TED Talk about crypto. Nothing says romance like a man explaining blockchain over wine. One woman said her date didn't ask a single question. He just launched into a 90-minute lecture on cryptocurrency. He brought his laptop, opened a PowerPoint titled "The Future of Love and Bitcoin," and began. He compared relationships to decentralized finance, claiming trust is just emotional blockchain. When she tried to change the topic, he interrupted with, "That's exactly what the government wants you to think." She said it felt like dining with a Reddit thread. At one point, he drew her a chart on a napkin to show how emotional ROI works. When the check came, he offered to pay in crypto, which, of course, the restaurant didn't accept. She ended the night $60 poorer and 10 IQ points lower. He texted her later saying, "You missed your chance to invest, emotionally and financially." She replied, "I already did. I tipped 20%. 19. The woman who showed up dressed as a Disney princess. It's nice when someone makes an effort for a date, but showing up in full Belle cosplay from Beauty and the Beast? That's a new category of commitment. The man said he thought it was a themed restaurant thing until she stood up, curtsied, and said, "Bonjour, monsieur." She spoke in character the entire night, complete with a fake French accent and occasional singing. When he asked what she did for work, she replied, "I read books and dream of adventure." He tried to roll with it, but she started calling the waiter Lumiere and asked if the plates would start dancing soon. Midway through dinner, she asked him to guess which Disney prince he was most like. He said, "Probably the one who leaves early." She didn't laugh. She just whispered, "You'll regret this when the credits roll." He left before dessert, humming "Be Our Guest" out of nervous habit. 20. The guy who turned it into a fitness challenge. One woman thought her date's idea of a walk in the park meant, walking. Instead, he showed up in full gym attire and announced, "We're doing a 5K." Before she could protest, he started jogging, uphill. Every time she slowed down, he yelled, "Come on, you got this," like a motivational coach. When she tried to talk, he said, "Save your breath. You'll need it for the sprint finish." By mile 2, she was sweating, gasping, and reconsidering every life choice that led to this. At the finish line, a playground bench, he handed her a protein bar and said, "You just earned your second date." She told him she'd rather do burpees in traffic. He didn't understand why she ghosted him later. She didn't ghost him. She just didn't have the energy to text back. 21. The woman who brought her therapist on speakerphone. Yes, you read that correctly. One man said his date explained, before even sitting down, that she liked to process things in real time. Then she pulled out her phone, hit speaker, and said, "Hi, Dr. Rachel. We're starting now." The therapist, her actual therapist, greeted him warmly and said, "Don't mind me, I'm just observing." He thought it was a joke, until the therapist started asking him questions. "How do you handle conflict? Do you see yourself as emotionally available?" The woman nodded along like a human progress report. Midway through dinner, the therapist suggested they explore attachment patterns, and he realized he was in a joint session he hadn't consented to. When he asked if they could maybe turn off the call, the woman said, "Boundaries are important, but not yet." He left mid-session. She texted later, "Dr. Rachel felt you have avoidant tendencies." He replied, "She's right. Starting now." 22. The guy who used pickup lines from a bookstore bargain bin. Some men flirt naturally. Others rely on ancient artifacts disguised as the 101 best pickup lines. One woman said her date opened with, "Are you Wi-Fi? Because I'm feeling a connection." She thought it was ironic. It wasn't. He had a list, printed, highlighted, and organized by situation. When she rolled her eyes, he flipped to Chapter 3, Handling Resistance. He proudly announced, "I'm workshopping my material." Each line got progressively worse. "Do you have a map? Because I just got lost in your eyes." Then, "Are you a magician? Because whenever I look at you, everyone else disappears." The waitress almost dropped her tray laughing. By dessert, he asked, "Be honest, which one's landed?" She replied, "The check." He marked it down in his notebook and said, "Constructive feedback is key." She said it felt less like a date and more like beta testing human cringe. The book should have been titled 101 Ways to Guarantee You'll Be Single Forever. 23. The woman who treated the date like a true crime podcast. He thought dinner would be lighthearted. Instead, it was a cross-examination worthy of Dateline. She started by asking where he was from, then followed with, "Do you have an alibi for last Friday?" She wasn't joking. She said she listened to too many crime podcasts to trust anyone. Throughout the night, she took notes, actual written notes, about his potential red flags. When he mentioned having a dog, she muttered, "Interesting. Sociopaths often like control over animals." When he excused himself to use the restroom, she discreetly checked his wallet for evidence. At the end, she said, "You seem safe, but I'll verify through public records." He left wondering if he'd been on a date or an interrogation. The next day, she texted, "You passed my background check." He replied, "Cool. I failed my sanity check for agreeing to go." 24. The guy who turned dinner into a stand-up routine. She said he introduced himself by saying, "I'm basically a comedian." Red flag number 1. Then he winked and said, "Don't worry, you'll get free tickets tonight." Red flag number 2. The rest of the meal was a hostage situation disguised as open mic night. Every time she spoke, he turned it into a punchline. "You're a nurse? Wow, so you like patients. Good thing you'll need one to date me." He laughed at his own jokes so hard the waiter stopped making eye contact. She smiled politely while internally calculating how fast she could fake food poisoning. When she didn't laugh, he said, "Tough crowd," and actually tapped an imaginary mic. After the check, he asked, "So, do I get a standing ovation or a second date?" She stood and left. He called out, "Guess that's the ovation." Somewhere, a comedy club breathed a sigh of relief. 25. The woman who talked only in movie quotes. At first, it seemed funny. She dropped a few references and he laughed, but soon he realized every sentence was a quote. "You look lovely tonight," he said. She replied, "You had me at hello." When the waiter asked for her order, she said, "I'll have what she's having." She even toasted the wine with, "Here's looking at you, kid." By dessert, he tried to test her limits. "So, what do you do for work?" She stared dramatically into the distance and whispered, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." He sighed. "Can we please just talk like humans?" She smiled and said, "I'm just a girl, standing in front of a boy." That's when he realized she might not stop until the credits rolled. When he left, she shouted, "Nobody puts baby in a corner." He replied, "Then maybe she should stay in the theater." 26. The guy who showed up with a binder of deal breakers. Most people bring flowers. He brought a 3-ring binder. He said he liked to stay organized in love. Inside were laminated pages labeled red flags, possible exceptions, and non-negotiables. He flipped through them like a salesman giving a presentation. No smokers, no cats, no astrology, no strong opinions about cilantro. She tried to joke about it, but he corrected her tone, saying, "This is serious. Compatibility is about efficiency." Page 3 featured a color-coded chart titled Ideal Girlfriend Traits, which included laughs but not too loud, and uses coasters. When she pointed out that sounded controlling, he said, "I prefer to think of it as pre-planning happiness." She excused herself, claiming she had to feed her fish. He said, "Wait, fish are on the watch list." She didn't turn back. Somewhere out there, that binder is collecting dust, probably right next to its author's social life. 27. The woman who pretended to be British for the entire date. He matched with someone named Claire from Ohio. The moment she arrived, she spoke in a heavy London accent. "Pleasure to meet you, darling," she said, sipping her water like royalty. He asked, "Oh, you're from England?" She hesitated, then committed hard. She said she'd just flown in from Manchester and began complaining about the American portion sizes. Halfway through, her accent started slipping, jumping from London to Australian to vaguely pirate. When he finally asked where she really grew up, she sighed and whispered, "Cleveland." She admitted she thought British accents made her sound mysterious and worldly. He told her she sounded like a BBC reboot of Confusion. To his credit, he paid the bill anyway, probably because watching her panic switch between dialects was worth the price of admission. She texted him later, "Had a lovely time, love." He replied, "Cheerio, Ohio." And that, ladies and gentlemen, was humanity's greatest argument for staying single. From crypto lectures to sock puppets with abandonment issues, these first dates prove love might not be blind. It's just profoundly confused. So, which one deserves a medal for romantic disaster? Vote for your favorite catastrophe in the comments, if you dare.